Welcome to the Backyard Blitz. I'm Brandon Peebler. You can follow me at Peebler22. You can follow us on Twitter at the BY Blitz. You got Ronnie Eastham in the house. Follow him at Ronnie Eastham. Ronnie, how you doing, man? I can't believe we're already going to be talking about the draft being over now and our reaction show. Time is flying, dude.
It is flying. So my wife and I went out and bought a couple of bicycles yesterday. I'm hot.
It's a nice day out, man.
Oh, man, it is warm out there. Yeah, we just got back like less than an hour ago. And like, oh, boy, I'm going to go into this all hot and sweaty. Good thing nobody can smell me on air, though, right?
That's thing. I don't know. I mean, you are just down the neighborhood. I was wondering what that stench was on the way, but yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
I figured. Dude, I want to say our bracket got busted at pick 3. That was the one. Stingley did not predict that. There was not a lot of people that predict that at all, but there was a lot of momentum on draft day that could potentially happen. But man, what were your initial thoughts of the draft? Because it was an exciting draft. It was very unpredictable, but wow, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, so when the Stingley thing happened, like I said a while ago, I looked over my wife. I was like, yeah, that's a bracket buster right there. At pick 3, and that's just going to cascade it from down. But when it happened, I was like, I should have changed my mock, even though, we already had it completed and everything. Because, same like you were just saying, I started hearing kind of that day that might happen. And I was listening to some of the podcasts as heading home that morning, in fact. And I was listening to that, and I was like, no way, they'd take it. But, it happened. And, I mean, kudos to Houston for keeping that hush-hush. Because it couldn't have been a last-minute decision for them. I'm sure that they were probably looking at that for – longer than 24-hour period.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there was a lot of rumblings that came out of Jacksonville about Trayvon Walker. We started hearing that about a couple weeks in advance, enough to where we changed our mocks, right? So I think our final 2 mocks, both of us had Trayvon Walker going 1, and then Aiden Hutchinson going 2. I was actually kind of surprised that Detroit, if they must have known that Trayvon was going 1 because they held that pick. I imagine if it would have been Hutchinson, they might have been wanting to finagle a little bit, but trade-wise, I think Vegas had the over-under at 1.5.
Crazy.
But was there 5 or 6 trades in the first round? And then not to mention the players that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, just uncanny. It was like I couldn't keep up with all the stuff that was going on between the picks, players. Now somebody else is trading up. That was gnarly.
Yeah. What was it? 11, 12, and 13 back to back, or 12, 13, 14, somewhere around in there. I was like, are you kidding me? This is just destroying my mock.
Absolutely.
It was nuts. And then we have, I think, 6 or 7 wide receivers in the first 20, which is a record. That hasn't happened before.
No.
Crazy draft. It was fun to watch.
And so Ronnie, I got to toot my horn here. There was only 1 quarterback that was selected.
Yeah.
I had 2, you had 4. But I think we could have seen it go in a number of different ways. I could have been on board with 3. I could have been on board with 4, the certain spots if somebody wanted to trade up. But I was surprised with the first guy that was taken. And then the gap between the first quarterback to what was it, the 3rd round when finally Malik Willis came off the board. It wasn't, I was like, okay, day 2, turn on the draft. Malik Willis is going to go early. The whole day. The whole second round, he went by. And then in the 3rd round, I don't know. I want to say that we talked about this. It was a weaker quarterback class, but you can almost talk yourself into, okay, these guys need a quarterback. This team needs a quarterback. I can see that happening. You almost talk yourself into there's going to be 3 going. There's going to be 4 going, right?
Well,
and then all of a sudden it was 1.
Yeah, and I think the risk that you run there is if you're a team that's looking for a quarterback, do you wait and hope that another team doesn't take him? So I think there was a risk there by not. But as the draft was going on, I think the teams were starting to realize nobody's going to take a quarterback, so we can wait. We don't have to get him in the first round like we thought we might have to. I think had Pickett gone sooner, I think there could have been a potential run on the quarterbacks. But since we didn't even have one until the 20th pick, I think the teams that needed a quarterback's like, yeah, we can wait. Nobody's going to take him. Let's wait. And it worked out for him for sure, especially if they pay up.
Absolutely. Carolina was the one that I had my eyes on because if
Yeah.
Carolina selected one, I felt like that there was other teams that would feel pressured. Okay, now we need to get our guy
Yep. Yep.
because somebody else is going to come up too. But what happened was kind of the opposite. It wasn't the quarterbacks. Stingley goes, he went 3,
3.
and then Sauce Gardner goes 4. But then all of a sudden you had all these amazing tackles that were available right now that teams were like, okay, we're going to get our tackle. We're going to be able to get a guy that maybe we didn't even think that we are going to be able to get. So I mean, it was pretty incredible to watch that happen. Stingley messed up the top 10. I can't talk past the 10 because they all kind of swapped
Yeah.
around. And then it was after that, then it was the trades that kind of messed stuff up. But I want to talk about who won draft night. Like, who was the team that won draft night? And I'm going to bring this up here. I got the Jets, man. I got the Jets as winning. I mean, they had a tremendous night. The pick number 4, we talked about Sauce Gardner going. I felt like he was the top corner in the draft. You can make an argument for Stingley. I don't think you can go. I think it's more along the schemes, but Robert Saleh likes those long, lanky corners that fit in that kind of Seattle cover 3 type of scheme that plays a lot over the top. Gardner fit perfect in that. And then at 10, I know we talked a lot about Jameson Williams going in that spot. And they went with Garrett Wilson, which was kind of a surprise where I was like, man, it wasn't Drake London. It wasn't Olave. It wasn't Williams. It was Garrett Wilson that went. We actually had him going to Atlanta at pick 8. And then the craziest thing was they traded back up into the first round and selected Jermaine Johnson. So those 3 guys right there, those can change the blueprint of what your team looks like. You got a corner that has the ability to be a shutdown corner. You got Garrett Wilson, who has the ability to be a number 1 wide receiver to pair up with your quarterback that you selected 2 last year. And then you get a pass rusher that fell all the way to 26. And I remember we were like, Jermaine Johnson, how is he falling down in the 20s? And we were trying to find a way to move him back up, but he seemed to kind of still stick there. And then we were hearing a lot of stuff a couple days before that he could be a top 10 guy, but then the second round is where they crushed it and just really solidified. I thought their first round was great, but we talked about Breece Hall potentially going to the Buffalo Bills, and they nabbed him early in the second round and really got 4 players that can really change that team. I know it's the AFC East and the Jets is kind of a swear word in your house, probably not as bad as New England. But what did you think about the Jets and what their draft looked like?
I was actually impressed. I mean, so you could argue they got the best player at 3 different positions in this draft, right? And that's excluding Jermaine Johnson. I was shocked to see that he had fallen. Inexplicably, I really don't know what the situation was with that. The only thing that I was kind of hearing is I guess his character might have been a little bit of a question as far as not like off the field necessarily issues, but just his attitude, being a little over the top, arrogant, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, almost fell out of the first round. That's just nuts. They stacked up on that first round with some serious talent. I'm not concerned about them just yet because they are still rookies. If Zach Wilson, though, takes a step this year and continues to progress, look out next year and the following season because they could be a scary team.
He bulked up. I don't know if you saw the latest pictures of Zach Wilson. They're in their rookie minicamp or OTAs, whatever it is. He looks like he put on about 15 pounds of muscle. My thoughts on him last year coming in the NFL is that he might be too small.
So
as far as being able to take
90 now.
Yeah. So, I mean, but he looks like, and that happens to young men, sometimes you blossom a little bit later. Sometimes, people hit 18 and they gain 20 pounds of muscle and you're like, who is that guy? He comes back, and you're like, wow.
Senior year and you're asking for a birth certificate.
Yeah, exactly. Senior year. And you're like, where you got a beard? Oh, okay. But Robert Saleh has done a great job kind of coaching this team, but their GM has done a really great job at least piecing together. And was it Joe Douglas has done a great job of in this draft, I was really, really impressed. And I can imagine, I mean, you see the Jets up there, 4-13. Nobody's looking at the New England Patriots, at least right now, and we're going to have a conversation about that. But everybody's looking at the Buffalo Bills, and that not just in that division, but I think in the NFL. And you got to cover those receivers. You got to be able to get after the quarterback, and that AFC is loaded, and they got some good young players that, ultimately, I mean, this is a draft class that if they hit on, I mean, hell, if they hit on 3 of these guys, 2 of these guys, it's a successful draft. I mean, Breece Hall, if he comes out and just kills it and takes a lot of pressure off of Zach Wilson, and Garrett Wilson starts to, kind of take off, and they do have some guys there, that's going to be impressive. But I had the Jets as one of the top winners. And Ronnie, I'm going to let you take this one because I know we were texting back and forth. You feel really great about the draft. There wasn't a lot of holes in the Buffalo Bills. They were first in the AFC East last year. Everybody and their grandmothers picking them to win the Super Bowl this upcoming year. And then they had a tremendous draft night. So, Ronnie, you got the logo in the background. You got the hat. You got the jersey on. Talk about your team, man.
I think they killed it. They got a guy in Kyer Elam that is being talked about. This guy could be a true CB1 at his highest potential, at his ceiling. If you can get him and Trey White gets back, it's two, serious lockdown corners on your defensive side, along with, of course, those 2 safeties they got in Poyer and Hyde. It's phenomenal. It's funny with James Cook. I was listening to One Bills Live, and they had Greg Cosell on there, and he was talking about James Cook and how he's the absolutely perfect fit for the Bills. And they kind of went into, why and the X's and O's as Cosell does. And the more I listened to it, and then I started kind of watching some of Cook's, his tape, and I was like, yeah, that's the one piece of the offense that Buffalo really is lacking. Singletary does an okay job in the passing game, but he's not going to scare anybody. He's not a guy that okay, what's he doing out wide? Oh, crap, we better get somebody. Cook is that guy. You can split him out wide. You can put him in the slot. You can put him in the backfield and motion him out. You can do all sorts of stuff with him in the passing game. And, mixing some carries there. He's not an every down kind of back. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. I believe he's just under 200 pounds. But that's where Singletary comes in. Singletary can handle the bulk of the carries. I think it's a great 1-2 punch right there. And the great thing about running backs as rookies, that's the one position that generally they can come in and have an impact right away.
Right. As long as you're not asking them to pass protect. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. But James Cook isn't going to be that guy that's going to be back there anyway, because you're going to want him out on a route most likely.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. Bernard, I was kind of hearing some rumblings that they reached a little bit for him. But it's really kind of a position that they didn't necessarily need. It's more of a depth pick. But as this draft went on, you could really see where the Bills roster is right now. They're in a position where they can move around, do what they want with draft picks. They don't have to stockpile draft picks. So if they want to throw some together to move up, they can do that. If they want to add some luxury pieces like a James Cook, they can do that. And that was the thing initially when they drafted Elam. In fact, I thought they moved up from 2 spots to get him. But the more I kind of looked at it, there was a lot of people trading up that we did not expect necessarily. At least I didn't expect that to see that. And I guess that was the thing that Brandon Beane was concerned about, was somebody jumping them into that 23 to 24, getting their guy. He was their last guy on their draft board with a true first round grade. And so Beane was like, I didn't want to risk it. I packaged some picks together, moved up, we got our guy. That's the beauty of being where they are right now. And there's not that many teams that have a roster built like that, where they can just kind of do what they want and don't have to worry about stockpiling draft picks. They don't have to worry about a rebuild. They can just kind of plug in pieces here and there. They can get some luxury picks for the future, depth pieces like Terrell Bernard. My favorite player of this whole draft, I think you know who that is.
I do.
Khalil Shakir. That is fantastic. You and I have spent the last handful of years watching him play for Boise State. Somebody tweeted the other day a video of him making a one-handed grab on the sidelines, kind of doing a little 360 thing. And so I responded with, living here in Boise State, I've watched every single one of his games. That's a regular thing. Like every single weekend he was doing that. And I remember even saying last year, your senior year, watching some of those plays, this kid's going to make it in the NFL. His hands are incredible. He made some amazing catches. So I'm really
He's
excited to
good
see what
after
he
he's
does.
a good run after the catch. I know that he's not like necessarily like the biggest kid, but when you look at these receivers now, there's not a lot of 6'4", 225 guys. There's a lot
Yeah.
of 6'1", 195, type of guys, and that's kind of where he fits in. But I was hoping that one of us was going to get him. I know there was talk. A lot of Niners fans were looking at him, saying that he would fit phenomenally in Kyle Shanahan's system. So I was happy when I saw Shakir come across that he was going to the Bills, because I know that you're a big Boise State guy too. So I mean, that's pretty cool that you get to watch
Yeah.
him in college, and then he's on your favorite pro team too. So that's pretty special.
Yeah. This is the second time that's happened. Uh, Previously, people from Boise State will remember this name, Derek Schumann,
Oh
tight
yeah,
end for
tight
Boise
end.
State. Yeah, back in the early
Shoo.
2000s. Yeah. He was drafted to Buffalo. I don't remember the round. It was later in the draft, but he came back to Boise, and they did a charity softball event over at the Boise Hawks Stadium. The Boise Hawks Stadium, for those that don't know, obviously it's a single A baseball team,
Yeah, short season.
and yeah, so they were doing a charity softball event there, and he was named one of the team captains. So he got to, pick his players and whatnot from the Boise State football team. Me and my stepson were in the crowd. We're all decked out in our Bill stuff, and he spotted us in the crowd. And he came over to us after the game, and he's like, "I just got to shake y'all's hands because I've never seen a Buffalo Bills fan in Idaho." It was kind of cool. He came to us, and
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
we got some autographs and things like that, and it was pretty cool. Unfortunately, his third year with Buffalo, he finally started to really put it together. Was making some plays. I think he had one game where he had like 4 or 5 receptions, about 70 yards, a touchdown, and then he got injured, and I never saw him play again. So it was unfortunate, but so it's really cool when a guy from your school, if you watched for years, gets drafted to your favorite NFL team, you can continue watching their career. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, he has an opportunity to really, I mean, when a guy's picked in the 5th round, usually you don't have a lot of expectations, but this is a little bit of a different draft. There were
Yeah.
guys that were going in the 5th or 6th round that had 2nd round grades, and this was
Yeah.
such a deep draft. It was more along the lines of, do you really like this guy? And where do you want to take him? Where do you think other people are going to take him? Because we got to nab him first. You got another not Mac,
Matt.
Mountain West, Mountain West guy
That was,
here, and that's the punt god. Now, I was keeping an eye out for where he was going to go, because I really think that if you have a really good punter in the NFL, you have a good team that you can use your punter as a weapon. And when you look at kind of how the Bills season ended, right? Maybe some special teams kick the ball out of bounds when they're not supposed to, but being able to use field position. And I really think that this is an underrated weapon that the Bills
yeah.
got. And I wanted to see what you had to say about him.
That's another one that I was eyeballing and thinking, there's no way Buffalo's going to get him. This is one of those few drafts for me that almost pick after pick, I'm like, that's the guy I would have taken. That's who I wanted them to take. This is so cool.
It started with James
Generally,
Cook.
yeah. I mean, generally, you're looking at you're watching your team draft, and you're like, well, who's that? No, don't get that guy. You made a mistake, But this one was so much fun. And then, when they announced the punt god, I was like, are you kidding me? This is, I've, cracked some jokes since then. It doesn't really matter if we have a punter or not because Buffalo's not punting. But,
He said he did make a really cool tweet, and I'm mad that I don't have it right here, but he said that he's the 4th down quarterback. That he tweeted that out. I thought that was hilarious. Josh Allen liked it, and I was like, that, you know what, that's perfect.
Yeah, he I saw an interview he did, and they were talking about him and making some tackles, and they asked him, "What's your favorite part of being a punter?" And he's like, "Oh, when I get to get in there and make a hit." And they're like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yeah, there's a stigma about punters, and I'm here to break that." So they showed some clips of him just running downfield and making some hits. I'm like, "All right, let's go."
He'll do that once on an NFL team, and he's going to get his butt chewed by the coach,
Probably
the special
so.
teams coach,
Yeah,
or he's going to get hit so hard that he's going to, you know what? I don't need to do that. But it was funny. I was watching the Pat McAfee show, and he was like, yeah, I don't know, because he was one of the best punters in league history. And he was talking about this guy. He goes, hold on the punt god thing, because he goes, Hecker is his. He goes, that guy is ridiculous. But he goes, this guy cares about his net average. He is busting his butt down there to go make a tackle because he's worried about his net average. I thought that was hilarious. That's cool. Well, awesome. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for your Bills. I know that I'm a Niner fan. I'm sure that you had your eyes peeled when the Niners picked, and the same thing when the Bills picked. And I mean, James Cook, I was hoping that potentially he might go to the Niners. Obviously, he didn't last long. Pick 63. They had an opportunity too, by the way. They went edge rusher, but overall, I think it was a really great pick by the draft by the Bills. Next up, I got the Ravens here because their first round, I mean, to get Kyle Hamilton, I thought was huge. And I believe they traded up to, no, they didn't trade at 14. They traded 25. That's what happened there. But Kyle Hamilton
25 was Buffalo's.
Yeah. Kyle Hamilton was a guy. I honestly, I'll be 100% honest. I'm a big Notre Dame Fighting Irish guy. I watch every single one of their games. He was always flying around the field, but his 40 time kind of scared me in the NFL as how fast these guys are. I mean, you look at this draft class of receivers, there was 10 guys that was sub 4.4.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at that, but it's also, you think about guys like Jerry Rice, who didn't run the 40 particularly well, but when they played football, they were much faster than, when they just line up against nobody. So he might be one of those guys, but there was a lot of people, Richard Sherman for one, oh man, they got a guy, and their secondary is going to be on lock. When somebody like that knows the secondary position, that knows what it takes in the NFL, says something like that, you kind of turn your eyeballs a little bit and you go, hey, that's a big deal. But the one that I really liked was Linderbaum. We were wondering where he was going to go. I mean, we could have had him slotted at Green Bay potentially, Dallas potentially. There were some teams that were in need of a center. Matter of fact, the Cardinals needed interior offensive linemen. This is huge for what the Ravens like to do. We know that they're not going to drop back and throw it 45 times. They're not. No. They're going to try to run it 40 times. They're going to try to do that with Lamar, J.K. Dobbins, and all that stuff. But I think that was a tremendous pick to get a young guy that can come in, that's going to be able to learn and listen. They're going to grind it out, and he is that kind of guy for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then David Ojabo, who we talked about, who's going to take a flyer on that guy? Somebody is, and they're going to get a damn good player. He blew out his Achilles in his pro day, and if it wasn't for that, he's going to be a first rounder. He falls to the second round, pick 45, but man, you put him on the Baltimore Ravens defense when he is healthy, and I think he's going to turn some heads. What did you think about the Baltimore Ravens draft, and what stood out to you, Ronnie?
What stood out was definitely the Ojabo pick, because you're right. If I'm a GM, especially if I'm one of those in the top, half of the draft, top 20, majority of those teams aren't going to compete even this year, right? So you've got time. Most of those coaches are newer coaches, so you would hope that their GM will give them, or ownership will give them a couple of years. He's one of those guys that, you go ahead and bring him in. He may not play this year, but then he can, hit the ground running. He'll know the system. I think it's to get him where they did. It's great. I was really shocked to see him fall that far down. With Hamilton, you and I talked about my first mock draft. I had him going number 2 overall.
You did, yeah. Very first, yeah.
He, many people have said that he was the best defensive player overall in this draft. So, and we've talked about the comparisons with the safety duo in Buffalo, and how the safety duo, when they work well together, can really disguise what your defense as a whole is trying to do, and really make a huge difference on the defensive side of the ball. So that one's a big one. And I like Travis Jones. I felt like that's a sneaky good defensive tackle selection there in the 3rd round.
This draft was deep. I mean, when I'm going through and I'm looking at these draft classes for these teams, I'm seeing guys that are household names for their school. That's 4th, 5th rounder, and I'm going, what in the world? it was a deep draft, and we said it, and we heard that all the way through. And I think as we kind of went on, even day 3 of the draft, there's people that we know that can play ball that are getting selected 6th round that you're going, I'm pretty sure that he could have gone in the 2nd round in some other drafts potentially.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to say about Kyle Hamilton as a safety, he's 6'4".
Yeah, he's a
You
big
think
kid.
about he's a tall kid, tall,
Yeah.
lanky, kid that they can get his arms up, and that is a huge deal when you think about over the middle trying to get a deep ball over him. He's a little bit taller than some of these other safeties, and he's going to be able to make a play. He can jump. So,
Yeah. I
really
also
good.
really like Daniel, and I'm going to mess up this last name, but Fahalele. He's from Minnesota. I can't remember if I sent this to you or who it was, but I was watching Minnesota's bowl game, and this kid, he's oh my gosh, six. I want to
Says
say
right here,
like
6'9",
6'6", 6.
380.
Okay, yeah, almost 400 pounds.
Yeah, I
And I
remember
saw
this. Yeah.
that, and they lined him up as a fullback on a 2-point conversion too. And I was like, this isn't even fair. He hit
No.
that line and just bodies went flying. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's a mammoth of a man. And it's even a mammoth of a man in the NFL. That is huge.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be kind of watching him because when I watched that bowl game, I kind of like fell in love with him. Like I like this guy. He's cool, and his attitude. They did some interviews during the game when talking about him too. He's a good kid. So I was happy to see him get picked. I wish it would have been with Buffalo. That's the one guy that we didn't get that would have been cool. But man, he's huge.
I'll tell you what, and as we're going through this, and Ronnie, I know because your team's in the AFC, you're looking at these, I'm saying draft winners, right? Got the Jets, AFC, Bills, AFC, got the Ravens now, AFC. So you're going to be an NFC team that pops up next? Yeah. It's hard to keep the Eagles out of this conversation. I thought they crushed it on draft day. They went a different route than we thought. Okay. They had 3 first rounders, what, a month and a half before the draft started. Then they traded one of them to New Orleans. They ended up trading another one away for a player we're going to talk about here in a second. But Jordan Davis, we thought that there's a possibility that he might go there at, I think it was pick 15 potentially. Well, they moved up. They get him at pick 13. And then we're thinking Nakobe Dean. We had Nakobe Dean going in the first round, by the way. I can't believe that he went in the third. Yeah, huge shock. He was one of the best defenders in the draft. And the fact that he fell to 3, I had him at pick 18 going to the Eagles. And that after 18, people were looking, and even in the second round, Nakobe Dean still on the board. Every time they had Mel Kiper's top 5 players that were available, it was him and Malik Willis for like 2 days that were up there. So that was a shock. But the fact that they got him in the 3rd round was crazy. But let's take a minute because this kind of almost stole the draft show. They got this guy. A.J. Brown was traded from the Tennessee Titans to the Philadelphia Eagles. This kind of shook up. I mean, this was like a big deal right in the middle of the draft. I mean, this happened right around
the draft. Yeah.
Right in the middle of the draft. He goes, and then not to mention the contract that he signed. And we knew, oh my gosh, like they must have been talking about this for a while because you don't just trade a guy now you have a contract. Like they must have been negotiating this for a while. They kept it hush hush. What were your thoughts about this? I feel like it's a huge win for the Eagles to be able to get a guy of that caliber because they didn't have anybody. We had a receiver going there in the draft. Olave, one of us had him. I think we had him in one of our mocks. We had a number of guys going there. But instead of getting him, they used that first rounder to get A.J. Brown. I think it's tremendous.
Tremendous. Sounds like they took a page out of the Rams book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what they did. And I mean, it makes sense. Why pick a rookie who maybe he pans out, maybe he doesn't, and go and use that first round pick on a guy that's a proven player in this league and relatively still young. I think he's been in the league, 2-3 years? So, he's still young.
Yeah, Yeah, three. I think he's played 3 years. So he was in the
Yeah,
same draft class as Debo Samuel. So 3 years. This is going into his fourth, which was a
fourth
contract
year.
year.
And
So
I think
yeah, I mean, he's a young guy.
it's a perfect compliment to Devontae Smith. It really is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he's gonna draw the attention of the coverage primarily, and that's really gonna, I think, open up things for Smith, who's a little bit he's a smaller guy, obviously, so he's gonna be able to work better in space and not have to worry about double teams necessarily, and things like that, bracket coverage, because all that's gonna go more towards AJ Brown now. So
Right.
I think it's huge, and Hurts, I believe, is going into his third year, right? This is year
Yeah.
3 for him. So I kind of see this as a make or break for him because they've given him some weapons now. Now you got to
And
go
they've
out and
given
prove it.
him, and you want to know what? In all fairness to him, they basically since last year have kind of given him the keys. They
Yeah.
traded away Carson Wentz and said, "Hey, we're going to go with Jalen." And they didn't have a lot of weapons with him last year, and he statistically, fantasy wise, performed pretty well.
All that
But
rushing.
he was inconsistent in the passing
Yeah.
game, but I'll tell you what, the 49ers played him in week 2, and you can see it. There's flashes that are there that he can make some throws and that he is dangerous with his legs. He just didn't have a lot of guys to throw to, and now Jalen Rieger, he's one of those guys that might potentially, I think he's going to be on his way out kind of because of this move. Well, I think
Probably.
definitely because of this move. But you hit the nail on the head, Ronnie, is that he's a perfect complement to Devonta Smith. We were looking at who could go there, and they were all kind of smaller receivers. Olave, he was a smaller guy,
Yeah.
right? And we're like, well, Devonta already is a smaller in stature kind of player. They need a bigger guy. And I remember that's when we started talking about the Brisker, not Brisker, the Penn State receiver. No, the Arkansas receiver. The guy at six
Burks.
Burks. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We were talking about him potentially being a good fit because of that stature that he had that would complement him. Oh,
Yeah.
no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go out and get AJ Brown. We're going to sign him to a multi-year deal. Thank you very much. I thought that was a great move. Johan, by the way, was ecstatic. I can't wait to have him on the show to talk Eagles because he got Nakobe Dean. They don't draft linebackers. He got his boy. They got Jordan Davis. They're going to be able to replace Fletcher Cox, hopefully. Now, I'm not comparing him to Fletcher Cox. I'm just saying that he has outstanding potential. That's why he was drafted in the first round at pick 13. But having a guy like A.J. Brown for your young quarterback to throw to, and they have Miles Sanders in the backfield, they're all of a sudden starting to get some pieces there. And mind you, they are not far off. They were a playoff team last year.
They were in the playoffs.
They were a wild card team last year.
Not that
And I
that's really
think
hard
they
to do
got,
in the NFC, but
yeah, they got better. They got better. So overall,
definitely.
those teams, draft winners for me. But now this is my favorite. Oh, I got one more draft winner. We counted them up. We went through, counted up all the mock drafts. And let me tell you, it made me feel good because as I watched the draft, Ronnie, and you said it, pick 3, our brackets busted. Our mock drafts completely just went to hell. I was happy to see that everybody else's was too. Everybody else's. We had our sheets out. We're marking, and I'm getting pissed. And there were some that were really close, maybe like the next pick or whatever. But John Kilbasi, congratulations. You won our mock draft challenge this year. You got $50 in Buffalo Wild Wings cash coming your way. He nailed the top 3 of the first 4 picks, which there was a lot of them that did. But then he nailed Kenny Pickett to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which nobody really had. So he hit a late rounder, he hit a late pick, and then he got those top ones. The points were there. Dawson, you were really, really close. You had 20 points, but awesome job, Kilbasi. I'm excited. He had a hunch on draft night. It's like, I'm like, I got to look at these. But congratulations, you won $50. But now I got to talk about the losers. These are the fun guys to talk about. These are the ones that had their shot and just missed it. Just missed it. And my first one here is the Arizona Cardinals. And here's why. One of them didn't actually happen on draft day, but it happened a couple days after. Ronnie and you and I talked about this. Kind of had a little bit of talking about top receivers, right? And DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for the first 6 games of the 2022 season for using performance-enhancing drugs. It's a final decision. He's not even appealing it, apparently, which he was very adamant in his statement that it shouldn't have happened, but he's also not appealing it. Take that as you will. But they also traded for Hollywood Brown, which I understand the pairing between Kyler Murray and Hollywood Brown, because let's face it, Lamar Jackson was just not getting him the ball the way that they would hope. But then you look at, they lost their top pass rusher in Chandler Jones.
Yeah.
They get 2 defensive ends here, but none of them really kind of move the needle for me when you lose a guy like Chandler Jones. I'm just looking at this. I mean, their second rounder was a tight end. They have Zach Ertz there. Like, I just looked at this and it was very head scratching to me I didn't look at this draft for the Cardinals and say, hey, they got better. In fact, there was a lot of picks I felt like they kind of missed, particularly their second rounder. I don't know why in this deep of a draft. And Trey McBride's a good tight end, but you got Zach Ertz there. You're going to have him there for a couple more seasons.
Yeah.
You just lost your top pass rusher. There was a couple guys that were available at that spot that they could have picked that could have really helped them out, but it just didn't line up for me. And I want to see what you think about this, Ronnie, because it just didn't match up with what I felt like their immediate needs were. I mean, interior offensive line was one of their biggest needs. They didn't pick one until pick 6.
The 6th round. Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, I'm with you. The whole thing. Yeah. McBride might be one of the better tight ends, if not the best tight end in this draft. But I don't think that really helped you a whole lot right now, especially like you said, you got Hurts in there. You're right. The whole thing was kind of head scratching. This whole offseason, though, for Arizona, since that loss in the playoffs, that terrible loss in the playoffs, it's just been downhill, and that hill is still rolling. I don't know what's going on in Arizona. I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to rebound and do much this year. But I could be wrong. It is, like I said, the NFC, and you don't have to necessarily be that strong of a team in the NFC to break into the playoffs. But
blasphemy.
Hey, that's not a knock on San Francisco. They're one of the better teams. Just overall, the NFC is weak this year.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the power, I mean, if you were looking at power rankings, and we're going to do that, we're going to have a fun offseason now when we start to kind of piece together what these teams have. But you're right. The AFC is loaded, and then you look over to the NFC, and it's really quarterback driven. It's a quarterback driven league. You have a ton of quarterbacks in the AFC, not as much in the AFC, not as much in the NFC. But the Cardinals are a team that you almost feel like the last 2 years they should be on the brink, right? Yeah. They should be on the brink of making something happen. Cliff Kingsbury, he has this track record of doing really great early and faltering a little bit late. And I look at this draft, and they had an opportunity. And by the way, this is not a knock in saying, hey, I think all these guys are going to be trash. We don't know what these guys are going to be. This is just our immediate reaction and saying what their needs were initially and compared to what they drafted for. And to me, that's what you lose your best pass rusher, your best one that was a game changer in Chandler Jones. Perfect. We got the draft coming up. We're going to get a guy. We got a first rounder. Okay. We're going to trade that for Hollywood Brown. Okay. All right. We're on the clock. It's the second round. We lost Chandler Jones. We know we got to replace him. We're going to go with Trey McBride at tight end. Okay. It was just one of those things where it just didn't line up for me, and maybe it'll work out. Okay. And they'll prove me wrong, just like the entire NFL draft did.
Yeah.
But this just didn't line up to me. Yeah. And I follow the Cardinals fairly well. They're a division rival. So it's like, man, they also lost James Conner. I mean, then they pick up a running back in the 6th round. I don't know what they're doing. And maybe they're changing a couple things philosophy wise, but I just don't see how they got better on draft day.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. And you look at that, the wide receiver room, they lost Christian Kirk.
DeAndre Hopkins is gone for 6 games.
For 6 weeks, and they may bring in Marquise Brown, and there's still question marks on him. He really hasn't proven anything. In fact, Steve Smith Sr. I love listening to him. He ripped him. He ripped him good. He was like, "This dude can't beat man. He cannot, people get up in his face, he can't beat them.
He's a speed
And
guy.
yeah,
He's
and
a
when
speed guy.
he's essentially going to be your number one. All the coverage is going to be focused on him because what else on that offense, as far as wide receivers, especially with Hopkins out, who else is going to scare a defense? They got Rondale Moore, but he was a rookie last
Is it
year.
Isabella? Is it Andy Isabella? No.
Yeah, so
AJ
there's
Green's
nothing
coming
there.
back, right? AJ Green's coming back. Cool, but
His
AJ
23rd
Green's
year
been
or something like
around.
that.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
He's gonna knock the dust off his cleats. No, and you're right. I mean, this draft class had a bunch of receivers. There was all over the place, and that they had to have known and that DeAndre Hopkins was going to get suspended because that kind of connected the dots a little bit for, okay, that's kind of why you got Hollywood Brown. But then again, it's Hollywood Brown. You're not going to replace DeAndre Hopkins with Hollywood Brown.
I would have fully expected them to have drafted at least one wide receiver, if not in the second round. There's somewhere in there, but not one.
You look here and there's not even one. You're right. You're absolutely right. So head scratching for sure. Cardinals losers draft day. The Patriots, you're excited about this. I'm going to top this off. And this one is now it's almost like you're talking about God, you don't want to say anything bad, like loud, it's like Belichick's listening. He knows that you're talking bad about him and he's going to somehow find a way to make this draft class work. But my big one, and now I know the coaches looked at this different, specifically Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay had a reaction to this.
That was great.
Cole Strange. Now, there's a lot of teams that had Cole Strange going early. They had a first round grade on him, but there's a lot of teams that didn't either. There's a lot of teams that had him third round. Matter of fact, outsiders looking in had him about third round. So when he came off the board at 29, what in the world is happening right now? At 29, he's coming off. Sean McVay's in the middle of a press conference because he's got no picks.
That's hilarious.
And he goes, Cole Strange just came off the board. And he's like laughing about it. And I don't think he meant it like disrespectfully, but I think they were looking to see where that kid was going to go because potentially maybe he could have been there for the Rams at, what was it, 108 or something like that they picked at?
Yeah.
104. So very head scratching to me. They needed a receiver. They picked up Taekwon Thornton in the second round, early in the second round. Marcus Jones, who's a good corner, by the way, in the third round. But I'm just looking at this, and again, I'm looking at immediate need. Did they hit on their immediate needs? It's hard to say that they did. Cole Strange, if he works out, great. But you could have probably got him in the second round. You probably could have got a better receiver in the first.
And that's always the thing. And when people when they make fun of or grade a draft, it's not to say that the player sucks because that's not at all what people are saying. It's primarily the value. Where could you have actually gotten him? Who could you have taken ahead of him and still got him in the next round or 2 rounds later? That's primarily what, when you're looking at draft grades and whatnot, and we're having these types of discussions, that's what we're looking at in most cases. I do like the Marcus Jones pick. He does project more, though, as a return guy. He's kind of a smaller corner. I actually did a little bit of write-up on him for the Rams because there was potential that they might be looking at him, too, at 104. Obviously, at 85, he didn't quite make it there. But he, if I remember correctly, he broke the NCAA record for kick returns. I believe there was 9 of them he had between punt and kick return touchdowns. He's a phenomenal return guy. A little smaller on the, as far as the physicality aspect of being a
5'8",
corner,
185.
Yeah. So we'll see how that part of it pans out. Taekwon Thornton, I believe he's a 4.28 guy. Lightning fast, but a lot of guys are, and it doesn't work out. So we'll see how that one. And my running joke on that is it doesn't matter how fast he runs because Mac Jones can't get on the ball anyway. So.
Oh man, shots fired. I'll tell you what. That's the thing that I looked at with the Patriots. You got a young guy that you selected at 15 last year. What are you putting around him? Because right now, who's the Patriots receivers? You have Kendrick Bourne. I know him because he was a Niner guy. I like Kendrick Bourne. Name another one. Exactly.
I'm trying to think of their number one.
What was
Um,
Neil? They're
well,
looking at
there was Nikhil Harry.
Nikhil Harry. That's who. Yeah, Nikhil
Yeah, he's kind
Harry.
of falling down the depth charts. There was one more. His name is escaping me. He's their primary guy though too, but that kind of tells you a little bit though. We can't remember his name.
Right. Now, I will say that the Patriots have never really had like a ton of receivers that are like off the charts. TB12 made a lot of those guys because he was amazing, right? You had Julian Edelman who just crushed it in the slot, but it's like they're trying to refine their identity. By the way, Bill Belichick has not named an offensive coordinator now that Josh McDaniels is gone, which I find that kind of strange. Okay, hasn't named who's calling the plays here. Whose philosophy are we drafting for? A lot of questions that I have. I just looked at this and I had a lot of questions. Like, with Marcus Jones, you're absolutely right. Tremendous in the return game. And I imagine he's going to have a lot of time in the preseason and maybe early on in the season if he has success at that spot. The 5'8", 185, are you looking at him as a nickel corner? Is that what you drafted in round 3? A nickel corner? Maybe.
Yeah.
He's lightning fast. He's got a lot of ball skills, actually. So it wouldn't surprise me to watch him have success. But overall, just looking at the way that the draft went with what their needs were, with what was available, that is where I have them as a loser. Patriots loser.
Well, and you look at their history, though, they're not known as a great drafting team. Like everybody puts Belichick and the Patriots on this pedestal. They have not done well in drafting over the years, and I'm sorry to say, but Tom Brady made that team. There's always this debate: was it Brady? Was it Belichick? Was it? But I'm starting to kind of lean towards the Brady side because Brady's career has not dropped off at all. Like
none.
It's just as good as he was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He won a Super Bowl without Belichick.
Yeah.
By the way, Belichick still. Yeah.
He's still. Yeah. I don't know, and it's crazy to say, but I think the tides have turned for the Patriots. They're at the bottom of I think they might very well
because there's no way they're behind the Jets, but the Jets are closing that gap.
Zach Wilson.
The Jets are closing that gap. Now, Johan, I know you got Randy Moss here. I get it. I know he played for the Patriots. I understand that. I'm talking for a season when Tom Brady is going nuts and throwing 80 million touchdowns. I know that, but I'm talking like even in the prime of the Patriots, there wasn't that guy that you knew before then, right? That was like that guy. There just hasn't been. All right. The Packers. And here's why. Now, Dan Orlovsky actually had them at WTF plus in his draft grades, and that was what the fudge plus. Because now I'm not against Quay Walker. I'm not against Devontae Wyatt. They needed those guys, okay? But Aaron Rodgers, like it's almost as if they're intentionally passive-aggressively trying to piss the man off. He even was on the Pat McAfee show last week, and he said that when he said that he was coming back, he was under the assumption that Devontae Adams was coming back. And when Devontae Adams said he was going and they traded him, okay, well, now who am I throwing to? Marquez Valdes-Scantling is gone. You got Andrew Lazard there. You have Amari Rodgers, who they picked up in the draft last year. A lot of questions of who he's going to be throwing the ball to. And then, all right, we have this draft where we have 6 to 7 wide receivers coming off the board in round 1. Pick 22, you're up. There were some mocks that I saw that had 2 receivers going to the Packers. There were some, everybody had at least 1 in the first round. Now, Christian Watson, I think, is going to be a tremendous player. I really do. I'm high on Christian Watson. I actually think the pairing of him and Rodgers could potentially be deadly. But they really risked they had to, I think they even traded up to get him, by the way, in the second round. They traded up to get Christian Watson, which is great. But where is that in the first round? Like, where was the urgency to show, like, in the first round that, hey, we need to get weapons back around Aaron? That's our guy. I look at this draft, And defensively, I say, okay, cool. You needed to replace Zadarius Smith. He's gone. You need to replace him. So they get Quay Walker. Okay. Devontae Wyatt, they needed to be able to shore up that defensive line. Okay, I can understand that. But every time they've had an opportunity to get these receivers, they've just passed on it, starting with the pick of Jordan Love. And it's like, you went through this whole offseason stuff just year after year, and there's nothing like, even from the outside perspective, we're like, what are they going to get Aaron? And then you look on that first day and you're like, nothing. Even the Eagles got AJ Brown. Like, what is going on? And so it's just hard to say that. I feel like that they absolutely won the night. They got some good players, but their biggest need was wide receiver, and then figure out what else you need to do, because there's some pass rushers that you could have got in the second round, but they decided to go early defensive guys, get a wide receiver in the second round from a small school, and trade up to get him. What are you doing, man?
I actually didn't mind. I wouldn't put him in the loser category. I wouldn't put him necessarily in the winner category either. Because I remember when the Packers pick came up at 22, and once the mocks got completely thrown out the window, I was sitting here trying to, okay, who are we going to pick? They need a wide receiver. There's really nothing left. Like that run on wide receivers in the first 20, I think they would have went wide receiver had those guys dropped. If any of one of those 6 or 7 guys had fallen to them at 22, I think they might have pulled the trigger, but there were none. So I think at that point it became more of a value pick to go after Walker. This is our draft board. We're going to stick to it, regardless of our positional need. So I think that's what happened with that. And you're right. Walker and Wyatt are both good players, and they could be stalwarts on that defense for years to come potentially. And same with Watson. I thought the interview with Aaron Rodgers after that first round was kind of interesting. He's like, well, you know what they say, defense wins championships. So he played it well.
He played it off because I mean, there wasn't anything. They paid the man, which, by the way, I want to bring up. That's why Adams isn't there anymore. It was very difficult to pay just those 2 guys and have everybody else around, because Jair Alexander, his payday is coming up, and it's going to be a big one. So I get it. And when I looked at this, Ronnie, I'm not going to lie, they were in that neutral category for me. But then the more that I kind of looked at it, and I was just kind of like, did they just love Christian Watson? Like, was that it? And were they like, okay, we can get him in the second round, so that's what we're going to do? I have to imagine that they really looked at this receiver class hard, and I know that there was a run on receivers. My question is, they had 2 first rounders. If they really liked the guy and they wanted one, why didn't they go get him? Everybody else was. Everybody else was making a deal to go get their guy. AJ Brown was on the trade block, essentially, and people made it known that they were trying to get him. Now, I'm sure that they made calls on Deebo Samuel. I'm very happy he's still 49er. He's not going anywhere. Matter of fact, that seems to be starting to mend up according to Instagram. Whatever you want to take out of that, happy about that. But there's AJ Brown that was potentially out there. Could you imagine what if the Packers got AJ Brown? Aaron Rodgers is happy, dude. He's got a huge receiver to throw out there too. Okay, fine. You don't get AJ Brown. What about Olave? What about all these other guys that are up there, maybe projected ahead of Christian Watson, but were really good receivers? They had the capital. Look at all these damn picks. They could have packaged some of these together and moved up. That's kind of where, when I looked at this, trying to be objective about it, and said, you know what, this is, if I'm Aaron, I'm a little bit frustrated, because it's not just one time that it's happened. It's several times now.
Year after year.
And this was a great class of receiver, and they didn't do it. They went defense, and they went to Christian Watson in the second round. I think he'll be a great player, but man, they were not aggressive in trying to get me any weapons.
Well, and I do wonder if maybe they did try to go up and they just weren't matching what other teams were willing to give up. Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. We'll never know. But you're right. With all that draft capital, it's hard to imagine they couldn't match or do better than maybe what some of these other teams did that moved up. We'll see. We'll see what happens this year. At the end of the day, though, rookies are rookie. And at the wide receiver spot, I know we've had some rookies that have hit the ground running and exploded. That does not happen very often. And maybe this is the new trend, and maybe this is the new thing. And we'll see what happens this coming year. But until there's several years in a row where we're seeing rookie wide receivers contribute the way that Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson did, I'm still not going to buy the rookie sensations just yet. Yeah,
I will say the trend, though, is moving in that way because
it
just how
is.
the college game is and how the NFL game is kind of evolving. And you have all these kids playing 7-on-7 almost year round now. I mean, you're seeing that these receivers are really polished coming into the league now. I'm actually really excited to see Christian Watson, 6'5", 200 pounds. That's going to be a nice target for Aaron. So I still just I want to see
Yeah,
them be aggressive at receiver, and they
I
didn't happen.
agree.
So they end up in my L category.
Yeah, they could have certainly done something, I think, to move up. Yeah, Watson and Drake London, pretty much the only two that were over maybe like 6'2", I think.
What was the
I think there might
Arkansas
have been
guy?
Trey Burks. I think he was 6'2".
Burks. He was up there. He was a big guy too.
Yeah, but we had our conversation earlier this week between me and you about the receivers and the direction the league's going. That's a conversation we should have maybe in the next week or two about where this league's going in the receiver market.
Absolutely.
That was
Well, the
fun.
rules and the
Yeah.
rules too, right? Like we'll definitely have a conversation about that because we'll go on and on and on. The Jaguars, man. First of all, any chance I get to dunk on Trent Baalke, I'm here for it. I am here for it. I just don't understand. I get the upside of Trayvon Walker. I heard all the noise. You heard all the noise. I am just not sold on him being a number one guy. The number one pick in the draft. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I was not sold on him being that. I get that you're projecting where he's going to be. But when you're in the number one pick in the draft, it damn near, you have to be a sure thing. And for me, he's anything but. What did you think about that?
Absolutely. Like all the talk and chatter of all the numbers and the physical traits and this and that, it started kind of being okay. Okay, I can see maybe why. But then you start really kind of look at the numbers, and yeah, the tape looks good. Was the lack of production based more on the scheme, or was he just not able to pull it all together with all those physical traits? You're right. There's just too many question marks. And if you're drafted number one overall, that has to be the least risky pick. And I even approach fantasy football drafts the same way. Like, okay, if I'm picking number one, who can I pick that is non-injury prone?
Surefire. Got to be the guy.
He's on the right offense. Exactly. Like I can, okay, well, if this happens, then I got this. If this happened, no, yeah. And even if he does pan out, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Like he has a long ways to go, especially as a pass rusher. That was probably the weakest part of his game.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it was Aiden Hutchinson should have been number one. He's about as surefire as you're going to get, I think, in this draft. Maybe he's not the next Reggie White or whatever, but as far as this draft goes, I think he was the safest pick, and that's where they should have went. But you called it. You said Baalke's kind of an idiot and goes for these guys. So
yeah, and it was like those things. It's like watching a car crash, right? Like you don't want it to happen, but there's a small piece of you that just kind of wants to see the disaster happen. Maybe it's a car crash is a bad example, but it was like he picked him, and I was like, the son of a bee did it. Like he really did it. Like he really picked this guy. And I hope that he's a good pro. I do, but his career forever is going to be compared to Aiden Hutchinson. Those two that comparison is going to be there. But the other thing that I was really looking at is there was such a great draft class of tackles. You just drafted a rookie quarterback in the number one overall pick last year. Okay. You got the number one pick again. Protect the kid. Invest in his future. Invest in trying to protect him and all that stuff. There's all these tackles. Maybe trade down and you can get one of those guys. Get some more draft capital back. You look at this. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks. As a team that had 3 wins, they only had 7 picks. 2 of them were first rounders, and this is what they did with them. Okay, we got offensive guys. We want to put up points on the board. Perfect. We're going to go defensive end and linebacker. We'll get a guard in the 3rd round, though. Oh, then we're going to go linebacker in later 3rd round. Then we'll get a running back in the 5th. They literally didn't put anything around Trevor Lawrence at all offensively.
Well, they did spend all of their money in free agency on wide receivers.
On Christian Kirk.
A guy who is at best a number 2 receiver in this league, at least to this point. Maybe he proves us wrong this year, but I don't see that happening with Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball. And that's not a knock on Lawrence. I think he's going to be a good player, and he's just not there yet.
It's just it's mind-boggling to me. So you and I are both fans of teams that really covet building through the draft and supplementing in free agency.
Yeah.
And I really and the head coach and the GMs are just they're mind-mouthing each other all the time. Like they're on the same page. So when I see a team like this, and I'm very familiar with the Trent Baalke era and how much of a dumpster fire that was because of how many misses he had in the draft. He had a couple hits, but you know what they say? A broken clock is right twice a day. He might hit on a couple of these, and it's not a knock necessarily on some of these guys. They just got done having Urban Meyer in that whole show that went on. Now they got Baalke in there, and I just don't feel like the way that this draft went was really trying to build through the draft and supplement in free agency. They spent big because they had the money to. Cool. But they didn't get really a lot of guys that I was like, sweet, they went to Jacksonville. They're going to turn that team around. Matter of fact, if it wasn't for the Christian Kirk contract, I might have forgot that Christian Kirk went there.
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, they paid him like a number 1.
They paid him like a number 1. And to me, just outside looking in, this is not sustainable to spend that in free agency to only have 7 picks. You have to hit those 7 picks. Like the margin for error is so small. You have to hit, like they got to hit 5 of these. They have to. They're 3-14 in the AFC South, man. Like they have to hit these because people are going to get fired. Careers are going to end because of this. And I just don't see like that long, dark tunnel. I don't see the light at the end. I don't see them coming around the corner. I still see them as the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are just going to be the laughing stock of the league. And I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm with you. And it's unfortunate. I think this year, well, I mean, we can go back to last year too, when they were signing Urban Meyer. That to me was really kind of the first sign like, oh, what are they doing over here?
Cringe.
You know, obviously Lawrence was a fine pick. I mean, everybody would have picked him number 1, and rightfully so. He should have been.
If Baalke was there, I don't think he would have. If Baalke was there, I don't think he would have.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wonder, too, how much of these picks Doug Peterson had a hand in as well. Or if it was just all Baalke, like this is what we're doing. And I mean, I don't know. You hope that they're working together, but I don't think they did Lawrence any favors.
They definitely did.
We got to remember though, they will get Travis Etienne back next year, so that will help.
Yeah,
but it's not going to help protect him.
He went down before the season even started, right?
Yeah,
he went down with the ACL early. Well, I know
so
we talked.
Be good to go.
Yeah, and listen, I want teams like the Jaguars. I like them to succeed. It's good for the NFL to have that parity, and that there's a nice fan base that is there in Jacksonville. I mean, you always hear Duval and all that. It's good for the league when some of these teams that aren't very good most of the time that start to get good. So for me, I would like to see Jacksonville kind of turn it around. Obviously, they're in the AFC. It's going to be tough. We talked about the quarterbacks. They kind of tumbled. We're going to skip past that because I really want to get to this because we're already at an hour and 4 minutes. We talked in length about the draft, and rightly so. We'll talk about the quarterbacks tumbling and kind of what we think about that. But there was a quote that came out yesterday that we had a conversation about a Ryan Tannehill, and it was basically that he is not there to mentor Malik Willis. And he said a lot of things that were very, hi, I'm a red flag. Nice to meet you. But he stated that he is not a mentor to Malik Willis. That is not his job. And I want to hear your opinion on it. I know we talked briefly about it, but to be honest, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And Ryan Tannehill is not a guy that Tom Brady. Yeah, you can get away of saying that about Jimmy Garoppolo. You're still playing. You're still winning Super Bowls. Okay. Ryan Tannehill, you're happy to sniff the AFC Championship game, pal. They drafted a dude in the 3rd round, and you're talking about not wanting to be his mentor. That's not your job. Man, that's just very off-putting to me. But what are your thoughts, Ronnie?
Yeah, it is me too. I think that's kind of one of those things that goes with the job. Like, when you accept a position or a job, there are certain responsibilities, unspoken responsibilities, perhaps, that come with that. And that to me is one of them. It's not like he's a young quarterback in this league either. And outside of, I think, 1 year where they made it to the AFC Championship game, last year they got bounced round 1 and they were the number 1 seed. I don't feel like, I'm with you. He hasn't really proven enough to say things like that. But even if he was, that's kind of part of what goes with being a veteran quarterback, or any veteran for that matter. Like, when the team brings in these guys, you're like, come on, I got you. And I've seen some of these guys that aren't even playing anymore saying, hey, hit me up. Let's talk.
Kurt Warner had a tremendous quote.
Yep. Kurt Warner. I've seen Andrew Whitworth do that with a couple of guys. It's cool when these guys step up and like, I got you, because I kind of look at the NFL, like, obviously I never played in the league, but I kind of look at the camaraderie and the togetherness, the family atmosphere of it, similar to what I did experience with the military. And when you have somebody like that, it doesn't mesh. It doesn't fit.
I've heard so many different sides of this argument this last couple days, and I just cannot get past the team the team aspect of it. Okay. On one hand, I do remember Drew Bledsoe, and this was one of those things that was in the Man of the Arena series, like the first couple episodes, when Tom Brady's in there, that he goes down. Tom Brady's starting to play well, and he mentioned, like, it's not my job to mentor him. He is right. Like, I understand, like, you're in the NFL, like, as a quarterback, like, these guys are told from, like, the moment that they become a quarterback that you're the guy. Like, you walk in the huddle, that's your huddle. Like, you're calling the plays, like, you're the guy, you're the face of the entire team, right? So there's part that I really understand. Like, I get where he's coming from in that aspect, but then there's the team aspect of it, is that you added to the room in the quarterback room. Who's to say that, what if you go down for a couple games, the playoffs are on the line? You're going to get a chance to go play in the playoffs if Malik Willis plays well, but you didn't do anything to help him out, right? To help him prepare for that moment. Like, I get that you don't want to prepare for somebody to take your job, especially at the quarterback position. I understand that. But I just look at the way that Jimmy Garoppolo handled it this last year. Like, I have nothing but respect for that guy. The 49ers traded up their, 3 first-round picks, really 2 first-round picks, because they swapped one. They didn't lose a first-round pick last year. I hate that argument. Yeah. Like you could tell. They traded a guy in Trey Lance knowingly that he's there to replace Garoppolo. And Garoppolo's first thing was, well, do I have a chance to compete for my job? Yeah, you do. Perfect. That's all I can ask for. And in every single interview, that's all he said. I'm here. I get to play football today. I get to go out and compete. And if I do my job, I'm going to start for this team. And that's how he handled it. You see how Aaron Rodgers has handled his spot. It's just, it rocks the boat. Kind of what you're saying. It doesn't fit. And you see a lot of circumstances that are different, right? Tom Brady to Jimmy Garoppolo was a lot different. He didn't really help that guy out a lot, but Jimmy will say that he did. You see Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady, where Drew Bledsoe said, no, that's not my job. But then you have a Hall of Fame quarterback like Kurt Warner saying, hey, now he was the underdog, so he kind of took somebody else's job and Trent Green's job when he got injured. So it wasn't like, what if Trent Green didn't mentor him at all?
Yeah.
Right? He came in there and kind of, so I understand the argument. It doesn't mean I agree with it though. I just think that you have that same color jersey on. It says the same thing. It says Tennessee Titans or Buffalo Bills or San Francisco 49ers, and you're in that room together, and you have 53 guys that make that roster, and your job and what your aspiration is to go and win the Super Bowl. Well, how do I do that? I need to do it by being the best teammate possible. However I can help my group, I'm going to help my group. Yeah. You're competing every day. That doesn't mean that you're giving the keys to the team to Malik Willis by helping him and saying, hey, when you see cover 2 and you see middle field open, when you see him break across the safety, you want to let the ball go there. That's not him saying, hey, I want you to take my job. That's saying, I want you to see success on the field if you should see it, is what it is.
Well, and I think it just adds to the legacy of a player too. Like right. if you're a veteran and you're helping to groom a kid to bring him along, and then one day he does take over and succeeds and has a great career, you had a hand in that.
Right.
So to me, that just adds to the legacy. Now, with the Aaron Rodgers situation, drafting like Jordan Love, and obviously he didn't handle that very well. I can kind of get on board a little bit more. Yeah, I can get on board a little bit more of that because Aaron Rodgers, like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still playing well. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Ryan Tannehill needs to step back and look in the mirror and be like, why did they take a quarterback? It's because of me. I need to play better. So let me step up my game and help this kid too. So that, like you were saying, if something happens and I go down, he can step in for the team and we can still win. So it's, to me, it's kind of two different situations. But yeah, I feel like with like Aaron Rodgers and the way he treated that, it was more of a, I guess, kind of an ego thing with him. Whereas I feel like with Tannehill, it's more of a confidence thing. I don't think he's that confident in himself because I feel like if he was, it wouldn't be an issue. He'd be like, oh yeah, come on, I got you, bro.
That is exactly where I was going with that, because Aaron Rodgers, like Joe Montana, Steve Young. Joe Montana was Joe Montana. Joe Montana was winning Super Bowls. They had a guy that was good, Hall of Fame caliber player that's chomping at the bit to get in there, and they made each other better. And even when those two kind of talk about it as they're older, they hated the situation when they were in it, but they're glad that they were in it because it made them better players.
Yeah.
Tannehill said some things also that were like, just hearing it from a quarterback's mouth was crazy to me. Like, when you look at your quarterback, you look at him like, that's your guy. I will follow him into battle anywhere. Like Josh Allen, dude, I would follow that guy into any battle because he's going to be in the front, not in the back. Like, he's going to be going and he's going to be battling, right? Tannehill, I do feel like he was a high draft pick in Miami, and that didn't work out, right? And look where he's at. I think when he's viewing it he's like, oh my God, it's happening again. Like, I don't know if I can go through this again this late in my career. Malik Willis is a tremendous talent, mind you. He's got the arm, he's got the legs. He just needs to have the eyes and trust what he sees to make it happen on the field. But he also said some things like after that loss to the Bengals that he had to go through weeks of therapy to get over the loss. Bro, I get, like, I'm the worst loser that there is, okay? I'm not going to therapy if I lose. I'm going to work my ass off, and I'm going to try to get better. I'm not going to go talk to somebody about it. I get it. I applaud the guy for being vulnerable, but that is the last position on the field that you want to, like, open up and be like, guys, I'm just not really feeling it today. Like, they're getting a whole lot of pressure, and I got to stand here. They're hitting me. Like, that's not what you want to hear. Like, you want to hear that confident guy, and you hit the nail on the head. That, to me, shows a chink in the armor for him. And it's a red flag if I'm a coach, if I'm a GM. Like, that's not a guy that everybody's going to follow. And then he's not going to mentor the guy on top of it. Man,
and I don't know. There's got to be some players in that locker room looking at him in a different light now. Like, oh,
A little bit.
Okay. Okay. You know, you brought up the that mentality. You know, oh my gosh, don't hit me. I don't. You know, whatever. I've had many discussions in the past with people about, you know, rookie quarterbacks. Do they play or do they not play their first year? And a lot of people will say, well, you don't want them getting beat up and their confidence getting destroyed the rookie year because they can't protect them, this and that. I kind of feel like the opposite. If my quarterback can't handle that adversity, do I want him as my quarterback? Like, there's
Right.
going to be some rough times in the league, buddy. You better step up and be a man about it and take it. Because it's just the way it is in this league. It's not ever always going to be rosy and perfect unless you're Tom Brady. And even he's lost a few Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing at the end of the day when you talk about the position. Like, what does the position of quarterback entail? Well, number one, you have to be the ultimate leader on the team.
Yeah.
Like, everybody looks to the quarterback as being a leader on the team. Tom Brady leads his group out of the tunnel. I think he's the first one out, running all the way down to the end zone, you know, FES and all this stuff that he has. Let's F and go. I love that. You know, you love to see the fire in that. And
Yeah.
there's also guys that lead quietly. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that, you know, people say a lot of stuff about him, but he is a good player. And there are players that come to bat for Aaron Rodgers. And he's a tremendous talent. He leads in a little bit of a different way. He's a quiet guy, you know, but he gets in the huddle and he says stuff. You got your calm, cool, collected guys like Joe Burrow. He's not going to be yelling and all that stuff. He's just going to be calm in the storm. And that's what you expect from your quarterback, because the storm's around them the whole time. They have a million things on their mind. They got to be the general that is directing guys, that's getting the ball in the right places, that everybody's looking at where that W goes or that L goes. It falls on the quarterback. We talk about it being a stat or not, but we judge them on that, right? We still do, if they're a part of a winning program or not. So when you hear a guy like Ryan Tannehill just have that, and maybe I'm making a big deal out of it, but just as a player, and I'm thinking about in my situation, when I was a player, I played running back. I didn't play quarterback. They were running backs coming in all the time that were trying to take my spot. My job is to not let them. I get that. Tannehill, your job is to not let Malik Willis take your job. But in the meantime, be a teammate. That's where I stand at it. You're all there to compete. Everybody's there for your job. Everybody is. Everybody on the other teams are looking for your job too, by the way, because there's only 32 of them in the NFL, and there's 64 quarterbacks that are on rosters at the very minimum, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for you. If you don't perform, you're getting traded. How's Baker Mayfield feeling right now? How's he feeling? You know, like I totally get it. It's not their job to mentor them. I understand. But when you come out and say it publicly and you're the face of the franchise, really, that is kind of it's off-putting. It's very off-putting. Like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. I want to see what happens. I want to see if people made a big deal about this last couple of days. I'm curious if they, you know, Ryan Tannehill gets the podium again, you know, what he might say. Well, no, that's not quite what I meant. You know, you caught me in a bad moment. You took it out of context. Yeah. I mean, I heard the quote. It's definitely not out of context, but I understand it. But either way, I think that's a good ending point of this. The draft's done. We've seen free agency go. We've seen the draft go. Now we've kind of seen where the rosters are at. We've had a lot of undrafted free agents that were signed to fill squads. Now we get to see what's going to happen. So we're going to have some team previews that are going to be coming out over the next months. We're going to be having a lot of discussions about where teams are at. Ronnie, the off season is, we're kind of going to go move into that dead period until we start seeing some training camps open, some OTAs in June, and then end of July and into August, we're going to start seeing some training camps. What are you most looking forward to as we progress into 2022? I know you got your Bills on your mind, but who do you think outside of the Bills, like, you've seen what they did in the draft and you've seen what they did in free agency, that you're going, hey, they might turn some heads this next year?
Man, I hate to say this. I'm kind of curious to see what the Dolphins are going to do. They are loaded. They did a good job of surrounding Tua with some weapons. I'm not a big Tua fan, but at the same time, like I said, we've seen quarterbacks develop over 2, 3, 4 seasons and really step up. And maybe he does the same thing. And their defense has always been pretty solid. So curious to see what happens over there. And I'm hoping nothing great, but I honestly think that's Buffalo's biggest opponent, biggest foe in the division.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good
And
one.
of course, the AFC West. That's gonna be fun.
Oh, the AFC West. I almost had to say, and you can't say anybody in the AFC West because they're loaded over there.
Yeah, that's a good
mine. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. And Johan, just hit record on your phone right now. I'm actually looking forward to the Eagles. I want to see what they do because they were missing some pieces, and I think they've done a great job this offseason of kind of plugging in those holes a little bit. I'm excited to watch Nakobe Dean. I'm excited to watch AJ Brown. I'm excited to watch what that team's able to do. And there's kind of like an underlying reason, because somebody get those Cowboys out of there, please. There has not been a back-to-back division winner in that division for a long time. Dallas got it this last year. I think the Eagles have the ability to do that. I don't think Dallas got better either, by the way. I don't think that Dallas got better this offseason. We're going to break all these guys down, but I'm excited to see the Eagles.
I can't wait to start.
Yeah.
Start getting into the teams.
Be September.
And we have the schedule coming out in about a week on the 12th.
Yes,
unfortunately, it's the day after our next episode, but we'll definitely have to dig into that the following week.
Absolutely.
This
I can't wait.
Yeah. The schedule. I am looking forward to the NFL's top 100 players. I watch that every year.
I love that.
We'll have to get.
I love that one.
On that too. Yeah,
I love that one. And this one's going to be tough. There's the last 2 out of the last 3 years. America's game has been a pain for me. Watching the Kansas City Chiefs talk about the Wasp play drives me nuts. That 3rd and 15 should have been holding on Bosa, but whatever. And then the Rams this year, because I know we've had the Rams number, and even in that game, had an opportunity to seize that game. It's going to be a pain to watch, but I always love watching that because we had a conversation about this. I know we got to get off the show, but we had a conversation about this. I love watching people, even if it's a team that I hate, win the championship, because you just watch a champion become a champion. Those guys know what it takes, and getting to hear their stories and the things that took them there. I always love to listen to the little things that there was somebody wrote this, or there was this moment that turned us into a championship team. So I'm excited about that.
The human side of these guys.
The human side of it. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, Ronnie, we'll be back our same place and time next week. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. That schedule is going to be coming out. The international series did get released today. We'll have a little chat about that. Germany's going to get a game. Pretty excited there. But until then, Ronnie, we're out, man.
We're out of here, guys. Have a good night.